No need. Hey, the gas tax.
That's funny. Me back. Oh, I don't think I still have a property down in Casa. It's tough.
I think they did, right?
And it's, political climate. That's a step back in time out there. Oh, that's beautiful stuff, yeah. But anyway, it's, well, our best to your dad, yeah. It's the free password. But yeah, fancy really is cup of tea.
Let's go ahead and get this meeting started, please. Let's go get the meeting started. This is the Fire and Emergency Management Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, September 25th, and it's at 2:30 p.m. We have a couple of new people that we have invited to come to our meeting today. So I'm just gonna ask everyone to just introduce themselves. I would appreciate it. So we could just start from there, please.
Nate Paul, Chief Deputy of Operations from the Sheriff's Office.
Tom Peterson, Fire Chief, Templeton Fire Department.
Keith Axon, one of the board members on the fire committee.
Eric Morrison, one of the directors for Templeton CSD.
Naveed Fardanish, I'm the board president with Templeton CSD.
Chuck Woodard, Park Superintendent for Slow County Parks, in charge of operations, and we brought Tim Faze, who's supervising ranger for this district.
Justin Black, Assistant General Manager, Templeton Community Services District.
Yeah, Jeff Riltz, General Manager, Templeton CSD.
Great, thank you. And then we have a couple of our firefighters here. You guys don't mind?
Bill Golem, Fire Captain.
Kevin Robin, engineer. Okay, great. And then we have Amanda from, go ahead.
Amanda Van Huss, community member, Templeton 4-H head, and I'm in charge of the fireworks booth. From Chevron.
Okay, great. And then we have a TNT representative.
Harlan Horvath, I'm the area manager for TNT, so I work with Amanda and a couple of the other groups in town. Coming from Fresno, so happy to be there.
Okay, well, thank you. And also, would you like to introduce us?
My name is Kristen Odenwald, and I am here representing Templeton Education Foundation.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Tim Faze, I'm the supervising park ranger for the Salinas district, for San Francisco County.
Perfect, thank you. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Appreciate it.
Oh,
There we go. I'm sorry. I totally forgot about Zoom. There we go. Go ahead.
Yeah, David Hirsch with Carmel and Nakasha, Assistant District Counsel for the Templeton Community Service District.
Thank you. That's the volume.
I'm gonna work on that.
All right, so, okay, so, and, somebody in here, that's our attorney. David Hirsch. Okay. So, let's go ahead and everyone stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So our first item is the fireworks enforcement discussion. So we're gonna go ahead and, we obviously had a meeting about this at the board level, and there were a lot of comments, whether it was for or against fire, safe and sane fireworks. So at that time, we decided to come back to the fire committee and talk about enforcement to see how we could make obviously the 4th of July safer for all Templeton residents. So we're gonna go ahead and start the discussion. I believe, Jeff, did you want to start?
Sure, I can just outline what we prepared, like, so I included with this meeting packet, the same information we presented to the board back on September 2nd. Because the board didn't get into a lot of details about the enforcement options or mechanisms, and the board directed this committee to develop some specific recommendations for the board's consideration. And then since that time, so that information is contained in the meeting packet. And since that time, we've received some clarification from county council and from the sheriff's office about how the county's ordinances can be enforced here in Templeton. But our recommendation for Templeton CSD was to pursue the development of a civil penalty or a civil fine ordinance that would take the enforcement mechanisms from the criminal proceedings, which is difficult for us as a special district to enforce, into something that's more administrative in nature. But So that's in general what we want to start with. There'll be many more steps beyond that, like how do we go about enforcing it from a practical standpoint? I don't expect to have all those items resolved today, but maybe get a framework so that we can, on the staff side, begin drafting. If there's items that we want to pursue, begin, working on those and coming up with some specific decision points for either the committee and ultimately for the board to consider imposing. But one of the things I wanted to kind of go through today early on is some various scenarios. So right now, as you know, Templeton CSD, our role on surrounding the 4th of July and fireworks is primarily to serve as deterrent. We would contact law enforcement if we had an altercation or something of that nature, but we're not really involved in the enforcement aspect. And I think what you heard from the community is they want tougher or I guess I should say effective enforcement for primarily these growth of illegal or aerial fireworks. Prominent. And the sheriff's office has spoken to the board, and most of you were here then, about the mechanisms of enforcement. And then again, additionally, just as resources for the committee's use today, we have David Hirsch available to send some research on this topic, and we folded that into the report that was given to the board on September 2nd, and then again have kind of understand better how the county's regulations work within Templeton CSD. So,
And Jeff, if I could jump in for a moment also, I really appreciate Chief Deputy Paul sending the information regarding what the county council indicated with respect to a provision in the health and safety code that may limit our ability to have a civil penalty ordinance as it relates to illegal fireworks. And that is a section that basically says that special districts can adopt regulations. This is specific to fireworks and it's in the health and safety code. However, it also says in a separate subsection that if a county has adopted regulations, then its regulations pretty much supersede a special district's regulations when it comes to what's applicable within the jurisdiction of the special district within the county. So as I read that, that would limit our ability to have a citation process for illegal fireworks. At the same time, the district can also have additional regulations and restrictions relating to its safe and sane fireworks. There's a carve out in the county code relating to fireworks for special districts that adopt and allow safe and sane fireworks. So, if we have additional restrictions, for example, limiting them to use only on private property, those are things that a civil penalty ordinance could be used if there were violations of that. We also can explore more with the county if there are any other alternatives to be able to assist in enforcement, because as we heard at the meeting on September 3rd, and certainly Chief Deputy Paul may want to comment on this more, there are simply limitations when it comes to resources with respect to the county and its ability to enforce the county's regulations relating to illegal fireworks because they're doing it countywide and have to go to other emergencies and so on, as was explained at that meeting. And we can, I think, explore otherwise options and how we can partner with the county as it relates to enforcement, since we all have the same goal, and that is to go after these illegal fireworks and limit their use in the community.
Okay, and then, Chief, did you have anything to add?
Well, just,
Or do you wanna?
yeah, I mean, some of the items that we've kind of put out there to the board last time, and I think coattailing on what the general manager said is getting the basic information back from this committee to be able to put a for lack of a better term, a menu together
Mhm.
to present to the board. Some of the items that I have put together with regards to enforcement action are about 6 different items: administrative citation program, aerial drone enforcement, private security patrols, targeted community enforcement campaign with regards to public education and those types of things. And then ordinance enhancements. So those are all the things that I'm hoping we're going to look at and potentially discuss along with what Chief Paul can bring from the county or the sheriff's side of things and then the county park side of things.
Perfect, all right, okay. All right, and then next, I think I wanna go to the county parks, because you guys were not at the meeting last time. So there was a lot of discussion about what's happening at the park here. And obviously there's a lot of fireworks that are set off in the park at, late into the night. And so as the TCSD, we realize that obviously it's hard to manage manage the park, but our people are not supposed to be setting off fireworks at the park, is that correct?
That's correct, and that may be a surprise to some in the community that we don't allow the use of any firework in any county facility, including Templeton Park, so.
Okay.
But it has become a customary event here. We kind of describe it as a community-supported vandalism event that happens once a year. Any other day that would happen, it would be a full 911 event for us. But we don't have the staff. Our rangers are not law enforcement; they're contact rangers.
Okay.
We call for backup when we need it. That event in particular is not manageable or safe for our staff to be there. So that's kind of our perspective. And
Is there anything in terms of prevention that we could do? Like, I don't know, put up, I know for like during COVID, there were fences put up and things like that. So is that a possibility?
that was anybody around for that fencing event? That didn't go too well.
Well, it didn't.
And signage doesn't go very well. So that's a good discussion. When it's become such a community loved event, how do you curtail that? I don't know. But signage is a go-to. We don't have the budget to support the extra staffing that event would need to monitor it. We just don't.
Okay, so yeah, something, well, I guess we'll talk a little bit more and see what with the help of sheriff.
We're open for strategies, yeah, for
All right.
sure, yeah.
Okay, and then I guess we could go to sheriff and, get your thoughts on the park or any other methods that you think we could, use.
I guess for starters, indeed, until they know, I think there's a lot of community members, deputies included, that don't really know that the park or any county, specifically Templeton Park on the 4th of July would be a fireworks free zone, especially for Safe and Sane, since you could go 100 yards away, and do all the Safe and Sane fireworks you want. Some suggestions that I have just in terms of, as we start this process, are going to be to really focus on the nomenclature to make sure that we don't misunderstand each other. That being, like we talked about the other night at the big meeting, a criminal citation versus a civil violation notice. Because it's two separate processes, two separate burdens of proof, and two different paper trails, if you will. And it also, there's two different types of enforcers or enforcement agents, in so much as a criminal citation would be administered by a peace officer. At least the way the county code is written, it references enforcement officer. Specifically, the sheriff's office has now code compliance officers in our newly created enforcement division, which is part of the recent county revision of the budget and of staffing. We used them this past 4th of July to do fireworks enforcement. Quite a few of the violation notices that we did write were issued by our civilian enforcement officers. and I anticipate that they will be used, you know, henceforth forevermore. It's a limited resource, but an additional resource nonetheless. So again, that's why I think it's important to focus on something like the nomenclature, just so we don't get crossed up as far as, you know, what process we're talking about. Because the civil process is definitely much more straightforward to take enforcement action.
Yeah.
And then as far as you focusing on the park and shutting down firework action in the park, I think that's very narrow in scope. And so one would argue that that could be easier to address because it's just literally the issue of focusing on the park, but at the opportunity cost of not being able to go 5 blocks away or over on Holly Street or, you know, wherever for people lighting aerial fireworks from the front yard or the backyard of a house. So it does become an issue of herding cats where are we gonna put the resources? And that's why, I mean, I think this discussion is worthwhile just so that we can identify the kind of expectation management for that, for how to initiate enforcement action. With respect for Mr. Hirsch and the info I got from county council, as I wrote in my email, my biggest reason to do that, to reach out to our county council, was one, to sensitize her to the fact that I will likely be calling her again as we work with you guys to do this, to make sure we're all on the same page. And it's not at all to try and flex some sort of county, you know, supremacy. It's mainly just what's the shortest distance between the 2 points of the problem that you have and the ability to take enforcement action, you know, efficiently. And, you know, having made a living of taking enforcement action, like, happy to help, and we'll dedicate the resources and personnel that we can, you know, and technical advice at this stage along the way to help you meet your objectives as a CSD. You know, we'll go from there.
Thank you. So Chief, with regards to the enforcement team you're talking about, is that county code enforcement, or is that under the sheriff's department, a different type of enforcement, civilian branch?
It's a civilian enforcement officer. They don't work for code enforcement, they work for us.
Okay.
So what we did was, they were formerly our code enforcement officers that were assigned specifically to cannabis, because that's a civil process as well. So we had civil enforcement personnel. As the county budget realigned, we expanded the scope of their duties to make better use of that full-time equivalent body, essentially. And they handle other enforcement things for us that have civil processes.
And just to follow on that, the county code sections relating to this, the new ordinance relating to fireworks that was adopted by the county this last May, the definition of enforcement action is any county employee, agent of the county, or law enforcement officer with the authority to enforce any provision of this code. And then it goes on to talk about fire department, sheriff's office, and Department of Planning and Building. I'm not quite sure what an agent of the county is. Certainly, any employee would include park employees, park department employees. There might be ways of partnering with the county as it relates to who's authorized to issue citations under the county's ordinance. It's something to explore anyway, if we're limited when it comes to the county code, and as far as an ordinance, a civil penalty ordinance, and we're subject to their civil penalty ordinance as it relates to illegal fireworks. Again, if we have additional restrictions on safe and sane fireworks, those could be pursued, any violations of those, under a civil penalty ordinance adopted by the district.
Sure, I'm sorry, I was unsuccessful in trying to get the technical stuff working. And so you should fire me and get somebody who knows what they're doing here. But is what I'm understanding then is what we had anticipated originally. In other words, the district come up with their own civil penalty provision for us to utilize as enforcement. TCSD, the county code essentially is not going to make that effective for what are now called illegal fireworks, or what we're now labeling illegal fireworks.
Yeah, as I understand, I was not aware of this section of the Health and Safety Code, which is specific to fireworks. Uh, Otherwise, I was under the impression since the district adopts the California Fire Code, which has prohibitions on illegal fireworks in it, that we could then enforce those codes that we've adopted by reference, the California Fire Code, uh, through a civil penalty ordinance. But unfortunately, as I read this section of the Health and Safety Code, we're more limited when it comes to any regulations that we've adopted as far as being able to enforce them. And again, I think that's something we need to explore further with the county council's office and see if there's some way to partner with them, because again, the goal is the same. We all want to go after these illegal fireworks in some fashion that's effective.
So David, with regards to the adoption of the fire code and the health and safety code that the state fire marshal in Sacramento adopts, the weed abatement elements are in that also. So I'm curious how that kind of parallels, because we are able to adopt a weed abatement ordinance separate from the county that's tied to the California Fire Code. And then we're allowed to apply enforcement and penalties that tie to property tax rolls and things of that nature through that weed abatement ordinance that we do. But this seems like a parallel track, and I've always, in 35 years, assumed it as a parallel track, that we have the same enforcement ability through the California Fire Code, through the Health and Safety Code, which references AHJs, authorities having jurisdiction. And so I guess I'm a little confused and would.
I was surprised to see this as well. You know, I'm familiar with the provisions you're alluding to with respect to weed abatement. In fact, there's a provision in the government code relating to community service districts that authorize specifically weed abatement in accordance with some provisions in the health and safety code that apply to, I believe it's fire districts, and that's what agencies follow typically. This is a section in the Health and Safety Code under fireworks and pyrotechnic devices. So it's a very specific and narrow provision of the law that specifically talks about regulations relating to fireworks that a special district is authorized to adopt. But then the next section goes on to say, if the county has adopted regulations, those regulations are the ones that apply and pretty much override the local agency's regulations. I was surprised to see this, and I appreciate it
With
coming to
regards
our attention.
enforcement?
Well, I don't see how we can explore that further, and community service districts in general, cities and counties are authorized to have civil fine ordinances under another section. But one of the principles legally that apply to different code sections and so on is the specific section prevails over a more general section. So the fact that we have the more general ability to adopt ordinances with regard to civil penalties, I don't think this would. I think this section, which is more specific to fireworks regulations, would trump any local enforcement regulation if the county has one, which it does.
And I understand that it would trump it. Does that eliminate the ability of the district to have one, an administrative citation program?
Not generally, but as it applies to fireworks, it appears it would be problematic. Again, I think we need to explore that further with the county council's office, and because they obviously believe this section, which they provided to Chief Deputy Paul, kind of answered the question in regard to the enforcement issue. And after reading it, I was surprised to see what it said and the fact that it was specific as to fireworks regulations. But it seems to be what it is.
So at this point, because I thought part of this discussion could be using, Templeton started to use drones and things like that and issue citations. So at this point, you think that may not be possible then for us to have a drone program?
Again, I think what we need to do is look at ways of partnering with the county. Certainly a drone program could be an element that assists in enforcement, and how that enforcement then plays out in partnership with the county and their efforts and their ordinance uh, is something I think that needs to be explored. That would provide more information to those that are empowered to issue citations. And it may be that this language in the county ordinance, I'd be curious to hear what the county council thinks of this, where it says agents of an agent of the county. What would that include? If someone is authorized by the county to issue citations, uh, then that might be a vehicle where in partnership we can continue to pursue the lines that we were beginning to look at or think about with regard to things like drones that would identify where the violations are occurring, things like that. So
it does sound like
it's a bit of a curveball we got, but it's one that I think still keeps the door open in terms of exploring how to get where we all want to go.
So it sounds like in the meantime, we will continue to work with the county sheriff's office, the county council, and better identify where our role is. Maybe it's just to provide information for the county to utilize in enhancing enforcement efforts. I am hearing still there is still some room, and one of the areas that was discussed back in early September is on the Safe and Sane program. That is a Templeton specific program. The board determines the boundaries of that program, so to speak. And is it the committee's intent to enforce violations of safe and sane fireworks? In other words, if a safe and sane, you discussed at the board meeting, ending the usage of safe and sane fireworks on the 4th of July at 10 p.m. Is it your desire that a person who lights off a safe and sane firework at 10:15 p.m. be subject to a violation? If so, that's something that we will need to develop. Other communities have largely carved out safe and sane fireworks, even if the use of them have fallen outside the traditional use. For example, the Grover Beach sample that we provided to you excludes the safe and sane fireworks from the general fireworks violations. So even if a safe and sane firework were utilized, in my reading of it, were utilized beyond the normal operating window, it wouldn't be subject to the $1,000 illegal firework violation.
Yeah, we would definitely have to get creative with how the language and in conjunction with county language would allow us to do a lesser citation for safe and sane fireworks outside of the ordinance scope. I know there are different levels of citations that I've seen with regards to fireworks and those types of things. And the more I start to research this, I mean, it's a wide gamut of enforcement actions, options, citation programs, and amounts of fines that take place with regards to safe and sane and illegal when they go outside the scope of it. Most of these are city ordinances, but there are some districts that have ordinances that are pretty tight.
So, okay, so we could, for the safe and sane fireworks, be $50 or $100, and then.
Well, I guess that's the issue is, do you wish to carve those out and say, look, we understand, if you create, I mean, I guess part of my, there was some interest in tightening the rules for the sale and use of safe and sane fireworks. That is anticipated to come before the board in the coming months. and be in effect by next July 4th season. Is it your anticipation that there'd be enforcement by Templeton CSD? Since we're the one who allows safe and sane fireworks, the sheriff's department isn't going to enforce the usage of safe and sane, because those are governed by our code. That's my take on this. I guess if it were, I don't want to speculate, but if somebody lit off a safe and sane firework at 10:30 at night on the 4th of July, is it this committee's recommendation that that be subject to enforcement?
I think it depends.
I mean,
I think there's a lot of variables to it, so I mean.
it should be under discretion if you
Well,
will.
I think that the first step, I think that what the community said and what the emphasis is really the illegal fireworks. And so, I think my recommendation would be more of, let's target the illegal fireworks. If after next year or the following year, there's enough information, we've got enough feedback to say, yeah, the safe and sane are still a problem, maybe address it at that time and maybe give you a little bit more time to work it out. Cause my thought might be within the California Fire Code, it would be something you can enforce, just through the agency having jurisdiction. But just to step back and say, the work that was done by the county, I think is, it's extensive, it's really well done. I guess the only thing that would jump out at me is that if we did citations in terms of, if we did start citing folks, where would the funds go? Would it go back to offset some of the costs of the district? Or does it just go to the county and we're okay with that because, we're working under their auspice and we're using their officers, et cetera. But I'm not necessarily opposed to the ordinance they have, just as far as, the connection. And I think the one part that David mentioned was that the agent, if the district could employ, whether it be our firefighters or private, or however you do it, because we know the sheriff's department doesn't have the resources to do it.
Well, and I think that would be one of those things that, does the sheriff's department then give, authorization to Templeton firefighters to start using their citation booklets, and how does that look? As opposed to creating our own.
And that's one of the reasons I reached out to county councils, maybe to avoid some of that duplication of effort, because I like this civil enforcement ordinance from the enforceability standpoint and our ability to direct my line personnel, whether you're in San Miguel or Templeton. If you see an illegal firework, the violation process is the same. With respect to the money, we're actually still, the ordinance is still like warm, right? Just came out of the oven. The Sheriff's Compliance Division is literally right now in the process of figuring out how the funds collected, working with the county admin and county council, so that the funds collected from fines will pay the administrative costs of the due process. From the violation notices we wrote this past 4th of July, 9 have paid, 8 are appealing. So that's the due process hearing officer. 5 have gone radio silent, which means the fine will be recorded against the property at the assessor's office, which I think is one of the greatest strengths of the ordinance. And a couple more are appealing. 2 were written of interest. And with your question, sir, about the enforcing safe and sane, and just kind of we wrote 2 county violation notices for safe and sane fireworks used in a county area where they were not legal because it's not a special district. And both of those immediately were appealed. So they're going through the full process because it was, quote, just safe and sane. Not saying that would be a reason why you wouldn't take enforcement action, but I think eyes wide open, you can anticipate more appeals and thus more associated due process costs with, enforcement on safe and sane. I think the illegal fireworks, and this is my professional opinion, that's not only the low hanging fruit because it's the easiest to see and take enforcement action on, but it's also the greatest threat because it flies. So the county has an ad hoc fireworks committee that several board members are on, county council's on. That committee is looking at the county contracting for contract drone companies to make them our agent for enforcement. So I think like partnership with the county generally, especially if the CSD could assist with the resources for a localized drone, And that's a real hands-off enforcement approach, so it allows civilian government personnel to be the, you know, involved in the process, because basically, and what we did this past 4th of July successfully in quite a few cases, is use the drone to identify the property. You're capturing video image of the offense. It's distinct enough that you can tie it to the APN so it can be recorded. And then it doesn't give you the immediate gratification of slapping them with a violation notice right then. But 2 weeks later, when they get the filing in the mail and it's $1,000, it gives you, you know, you have the corrected, the pain penalty, essentially, for lack of a better way to put it, that will ultimately result in a correction of behavior. You know, it's not gonna happen in 1 year, but this is the approach we've taken because it's a lot easier to fly a drone with a couple people watching it, recording it in real time. You know, they had a GIS map up on another computer screen and they're cross-referencing APNs and, you know, marking time and recording to then file those violations later. And so I think for something like drones, for a community of this size, I think that's a real logical thing to explore, especially, and that would be something that you could do with us. And then we would facilitate through the compliance division, actually filing the violation notices.
And I guess one question I have in terms of, you know, what general manager asked, whether we want to enforce safe and sane firework at 10:30 or not. Is that going to complicate enforcement for your officers? If we just say, all right, let's ignore the safe and sane fireworks. Let's go with the illegal fireworks. So is that going to complicate things for you, or you'll be okay with, you know?
If prioritizing, shall we say, like, because clearly if whatever regulation you set, if they're lighting off safe and sane fireworks in violation of that, no different than if they're lighting off safe and sane on August 4th.
Yes.
You know, we might stumble upon that just on patrol, and you're gonna get out and contact that person or take enforcement action if it's appropriate. Our people are still in that welcome to enforcement type role of constant triage and constant prioritization and constant employment of discretion, because I heard that came up. So it wouldn't, if the CSD and we agree cooperatively, you know, and that we're gonna focus on the illegal fireworks, prioritizing that. But if there's a threat to life and property that's born of the safe and sane fireworks, we're gonna take action on that, even if it's just response that results in the behavior stopping, because that stops the threat. You know, I wouldn't worry about the yes or no issue of enforcement, your decision on enforcement of safe and sane. Don't worry about it complicating our world, because it's complicated anyway.
And then how do we go about like enforcing the park here, Templeton Park? What should we do with that then? I mean, if we have the drones going, if we have multiple drones, maybe the drones could handle going out and looking at the outer areas, and then have an officer here at the park, 1 or 2, I don't know, but is that gonna be manageable and manage the problem we have at the park?
I think we're at the point that we're gonna have to take that on. And and what I mean by that is historically, right, for how many years has Templeton Park been the center of 4th of July fun? And the rings in the pond, you know, that spread out anytime there's always been fireworks in and adjacent to the park. If the community is at the point that it's time to like curtail all fireworks in the park, we'll have to figure that out. And I don't mean to sound flippant when I say that, but that's not a small task, and it's not gonna be like one deputy walking through is, you know, that's gonna be a challenge, because it'll be whack-a-mole. Yeah. And it's whack-a-mole as it is, you know, in the macro, but if that's the challenge that we're facing.
I don't mean to interrupt, but if it's one of those situations like we're dealing with, it is whack-a-mole, because we go over, confiscate illegal fireworks, grab their mortar tubes, grab the illegal stuff, And 10 minutes later, they've gone back to their car and gotten more, or there's another group over here doing it, we go get theirs, and it throughout the night becomes that, for lack of a better term, whack-a-mole project that we fail in every year.
We have enforcement in the park where individuals are getting cited, have to pay fines. We not foresee that spreading out to the local communities around them, where we see that type of enforcement so that it deters the individuals.
Me personally, I think it's gonna be indicative, or not indicative, but incumbent upon us to put a public education program out beforehand.
Yes.
To then put signage up, and everything around the park to say fireworks of any nature are illegal in this county park.
And signage at the safe and sane as well, so that they have it.
All
They're
fireworks.
already at the booths. People just ignore what they actually
In
say.
county parks, we have those signs and we're happy to put those up and just, so everybody knows, as far as county parks is concerned, we know this park is the heart and soul of this community and it's a big event, and there's from almost from sunrise till, to past midnight. But as soon as the sun goes down, it turns into a different scene here, of course. It is comforting to have a fire department right across the street. That lets us kind of sleep at night. But yeah, the damage we discover in the morning, as many of you have seen, it can be significant. And it's problematic. So we're definitely open to ideas to help prevent those damages from occurring.
I guess I caution us to think that public education is gonna solve this. I mean, I don't think anyone who's lighting off an illegal fireworks think it's legal. We have consequences, the behavior won't change.
But a question I wasn't able to stay for the whole meeting on September 2nd, was there discussion to reel it back to private property?
Yes.
So if it was private property, I think that would be the first step right there. Because I tend to believe most of the folks that are in the park aren't residents of Templeton. That's why they're shooting them off at the park. So, I mean, maybe a combination of the signage, but really that big campaign that, that it's not legal, but more importantly, it has to be on private property, Yeah, it's still whack-a-mole. It's still a start, but you have to start somewhere.
I think to start, like the idea of the signage, the education, we start early, the park especially,
Letting people know about the drone program.
letting know that things, as we progress within the program, we escalate towards, we get it so that it gets more restrictive. So individuals know that, hey, you're gonna get $1,000 fine if you do it.
So one of my, well, before I realized that we may not be able to put a program in the Templeton CSD program in place that could be effective. One of my concerns is I think the drones and the aerial photography and those concepts work really well for people who are hosting gatherings at a private property where you can identify a property owner and whatnot. There are a lot of fireworks lit off that don't fall in that category, whether it's something in the public right of way or someone's trespassing in a parking lot or the park. And I believe these kinds of programs are gonna be less effective. There isn't a property owner to go after in a street right of way. You couldn't, even if you've got a picture of somebody at the park, how much effort are you gonna put into finding out who that person was if it's an aerial photograph? So I think it's only part of the solution, but relying on the.
I mean, there's cost associated with drone as well.
Absolutely.
But
Well, it's gonna have
But
to be.
you're correct.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Chief.
Go ahead.
You're totally correct, and that's the challenge. That is the challenge of, that's the three-dimensional challenge of enforcement. So, and I like the idea of running through scenarios, even if it doesn't happen today, but as this dialogue continues. Because here's a scenario in that you have and a scenario would be for enforcement action in the park, whoever administers it, however many people. I think the board realistically is also gonna have to be happy with, in many circumstances, with what I've heard referred to as simple confiscation, where you don't get to write that violation notice because the person runs off. And here's why. So you put a deputy sheriff in the park, a guy my size, and an adolescent runs from their mortar. Could be a misdemeanor violation of the health and safety code. Am I to engage in a foot pursuit, which will most likely result in a use of force at termination, where a 6'6", 265-pound deputy jumps on a 17-year-old kid who's, quote, just having fun? And what is the community expectation of that? Or do we simply confiscate, curb the behavior and move on to the next person? That's some of the challenges that are the second and third order of effect that we gotta be able to talk about as well. And I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm happy to engage in this dialogue because because ultimately we support your efforts to have the community be safe. It's just, we gotta figure this out.
And I don't know, maybe I'm a little naive here, but I don't think anybody's under a delusion that there's going to be one silver bullet that takes care of this. It's gonna be a multifaceted thing between ground patrol, drones, possibly this Overwatch program, which is aircraft, our personnel, deputy personnel, a multifaceted public education approach kind of rolled into one package that says, okay, this is the way it starts. The public education program is just that first cornerstone that has to take place that says, hey, something's changed this year in Templeton. And if you use illegal fireworks, you can expect to get this. Oh, and by the way, they're illegal in these areas, and you will be cited. You're not gonna obviously tell them, we're not gonna run you down, but
Right.
essentially it's, you will be cited. And these are the fines that can occur. So I think it's a multifaceted approach. It's just not one silver bullet that's gonna get this whole thing. And that's kind of what we're looking for is, what is that approach? What kind of package can we put together to bring back to the board to say, this is the best within reason?
I think some of my hesitation too is because of the extent of the time of past practices is information and understanding that the whole community knows that this is how we're ramping these things up. The initial to just put everything all in one for next 4th of July. Many individuals may not know, they haven't attended meetings, they haven't been informed well. There's gonna be some community backlash from that perspective, and I understand that. But I think that our efforts is within, let's call it 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. We see on the line how much we can curtail it down to a point where it's manageable for enforcement on small outlying extents.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like maybe the first step is to just do a little legal checking to make sure our assumptions about whether we have the right, we Templeton CSD has the ability to impose our own system, or we must really rely on the county system, and then determine, is there a mechanism that we can be more formally engaged with the county through the sheriff's department or some other way, whether we're funding security footage or whatever to submit to the county sheriff to later process these.
Do we have a legal difficulty of moving from criminal to civil?
Do we have, I'm sorry.
Is there any legal difficulty for us to move from the criminal citation versus the civil?
Well, right now, we don't have a civil citation program that's in place, and it sounds like we may not be able to do one for fireworks.
At least as far as illegal fireworks.
What can you do it for?
Well,
They've been saying we control, because
So
we
could
enable
do
those.
Oh, well, yeah, what are we gonna, question? Let me just go to the public. Does anybody wanna make any comment so far on our discussion on this?
At the last meeting, it was mentioned that there might be some sort of fee attached to the sales of the fireworks to help defray costs.
Yes.
What do we have with that?
Yeah, I guess we'll discuss that, the cost of the drone program and things like that, and we have the TNT representative, maybe help us with that too, so we'll do that. Go ahead.
I have a question because I live in the neighborhoods, I've lived here for 25 years. You can't even drive down the streets, so we're talking about right-of-ways on public roads that we can't drive on, a lot of them are the safe and sane.
So, yeah, so that's going to be, so our new ordinance is going to say that it's only on private property. So if you're on the right of way or in the streets, that's illegal. So with that, we could go ahead and give you a fine of that. So that the main thing is now all this safe and sane fireworks needs to happen on private property. So we're gonna address that as well.
Address that.
Yeah.
it'd be CHP to
But yeah, I mean, whether it's us or the highway patrol, realistically, I mean, practically speaking, could you issue, let's say for the sake of discussion, that the fine structure is in place. So you drive down, and ma'am, I totally understand, because I worked patrol in this area earlier in my career, and I was a sergeant here assigned to North Station. You got the 6-foot ladder, and there's 3 ground bloom, 3 fountains, one on each side, and they're in the middle of the road, because it makes it a little higher and a little flashier, and that's in the middle of the roadway. And if that creates, and surely I can see how that would impede access. I would anticipate that a lot of times that's gonna be a contact, like get that out of the road, and you're on to the next contact, just for simple matters of efficiency. And when I say that, please don't misunderstand, it's not that we don't want to take enforcement action, you're getting as much done as you can. So that, getting the right of way open being the objective, the overarching public safety objective.
Yeah.
Just like being real with you.
But I mean,
But you-
before our ordinance.
You wouldn't have the ability to even say that.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
or it'd be more of an interpretation of obstructing a roadway, because there's vehicle codes and stuff, but
But now
I
we
think
have-
that having the ordinance, confining to private property is a straightforward way, and also straightforward for the public to interpret,
Yes,
and for anybody to take, even if it's just curbing behavior type enforcement action.
I agree. Thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Could that include a warning? Cause this is gonna be a process, a long process. So if they have a warning, they move, you leave, they come back, maybe not that same night, maybe next year, whatever it is. And it's not just on July 4th. Let's understand that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, and part of our ordinance is going to limit it. So currently our ordinance says that is, you could set fireworks from July 1st to through July 4th, but we're gonna change that to only July 4th. And that's what we're talking about as well, ending it by 10 PM. So, but again, if it's on the private property, maybe we could go a little bit, relax on that a little bit, but versus if it's in the public area or in the park, we have to be a little more strict about that. And then do we want to talk about funding? Like, I know we talked a little bit about drones, so do we want to talk? I mean, I know we have some representatives here.
Yeah, I think, I guess I'm, we just learned this new information yesterday in terms of the maybe the county's ordinance superseding what we can do, and I think we at the staff level need to work with the county to determine how would they like to receive information from Templeton CSD. If we want to step up the enforcement, how can we partner or participate with them? And, it doesn't do us any good to hire a drone operator if they're not gonna accept the data and process the enforcement action, right? That's just kind of wasted effort. So I don't wanna do that. I wanna know what's the minute, what do we need to submit in order to have action taken? And then we can determine, okay, is that something that we can do, and what is the cost? I mean, let's say, for example, we know that this aerial photography program was like, in Lompoc was 10 grand.
Mhm.
So that was like one flyover. Or a period of time over the evening, one evening. Not even the whole evening, just a
Just one flyer.
couple of passes.
No, it was,
It was one airplane that shared between Santa Maria and Lompoc, as I recall, and so that was,
What was the loiter time?
I'm sorry.
What is the loiter time on aircraft?
I think it was pretty much the whole night. It was hours at a time over certain areas. When they would see launches, they would head to that area and they would do orbits around that area, document, film, get the GPS data loaded, and they would do that all night until their allotted time ran out, land, download the information and send it back to Santa Maria.
That was about 10 grand.
Yeah.
Lompoc was 10 grand.
And then do you have any ideas on the drone programs?
I'm not as familiar with the drone programs and, but I know the cameras and the capability for GPS, loading, ArcMap, GIS, that type of stuff, is enhanced with the drones because they actually can create a map that shows property lines as it flies. And it self-identifies a launch area, takes a photograph of that and loads it or downloads it. And that's how they record where the launch came from. And then it's backed up by the video, high resolution night video, the ones I've seen that show the person lighting walking back to a property. And then that's the property that gets the notice sent to them.
And costing for SO in the park for the evening?
For boots on the ground, off the top of my head, I don't remember what the contract cost is. I don't know that I would need to explore directly with the sheriff as far as requiring you to contract a deputy. Because we already, like, at the open meeting, it was mentioned you should have people in on overtime. 2/3 of the people working on 4th of July were working on overtime. Every division commander was working. That's why I was in the field as well. We're bringing all of our personnel in anyway, and I already anticipate next year bringing in even more, like those, like I'm talking about requiring bailiffs who would ordinarily be off on the 4th because they're paid by the state for the year that they were, things like that. Like, so before I say we're gonna make you pay for a deputy in the park, what I'm committing to right now is that we're gonna help you in this enforcement action and we'll figure it out from here.
If we had a non-sworn able to do the enforcement?
Yeah, and that's where our compliance division, was created with this current fiscal year. So it's been in effect in its current incarnation since July. After this meeting and on the heels of some of this, I'll get with their manager, and I would anticipate bringing them to future meetings because our civilian, that civilian compliance division could write these county violation notices, especially if we had help on the actual information gathering, where maybe it's not gonna address every circumstance, but again, it's been mentioned several times, we're trying to curb behavior and change this. So, I think we're in this for the long haul, but this next year will be telling because it's gonna be where we set a different direction.
So I think just from the perspective of, let's assume that we can work something out with the sheriff's office for the time being and figure out what kind of information we would need to provide for them to continue with the enforcement side. If it's the arrangement like Lompoc has, that's maybe 10 grand for one evening. Ballparking it, maybe there's other programs that would go a longer period of time, or you could spend more money, certainly, but even just gathering the information is not gonna be inexpensive.
No.
And again, that's only gonna be, in my mind, that's only effective on the private property locations. It's not gonna do anything in the park. I mean, you're gonna see that things went off, but you're not gonna be able to identify who those people are, or certainly how you're gonna get hold of them.
And then, so I know you mentioned that the county is looking at a third party to hire, for
The
drones.
drone contractor. Yeah.
So drone contractor, so can we work with the county or your department if we are able to come up with funding to maybe get more drones? And so that way we could just work through you and that way we don't have to worry about coming up with our own ordinances or figuring that if we could do simple citations and things like that.
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely think there's an opportunity to work together, especially to allow that drone enforcement to be focused on Templeton. Because it's, what I'm kind of sitting here thinking about too is I'm hearing similar concerns from personally, because I'm the ops chief for the county, and I am ultimately responsible for resource allocation countywide. I'm hearing similar concerns and desire for uptick from Nipomo, more even from Oceano, even though we were, and San Miguel certainly. And I'm not minimizing what you guys need. I gotta figure out how to balance it out. So assistance with something, even focusing in the short term, like what can we do to get a clear and concise message out in this next year? Something like tying it to private property, that's I mean, at least, that. I mean, I think that's a significant place to start in conjunction with a wholesale, like, community-driven and supported approach to the change in fireworks behavior in Templeton Park. And I would just say that on the heels of the Feed and Grain fire, the unity and the support that Templeton has shown just as a community, you know, with all the fundraising support, et cetera. If ever there was a time to leverage that for messaging, it's right now. Because I think if you said, you know, like, Templeton is going a different direction, the 4th of July is not going to include, you know, the park as a fireworks zone, period, full stop. Like, at least you have some inertia with messaging that you've never had in previous years. And it's kind of interesting because, like, at these types of meetings, just like as a parallel, we will regularly get complaints of, like, kids riding quads, you know, ducking up and down on the streets here and then down into the river. And then you contact somebody and they go, no, I live here. And it's like, well, you're right, but we just last week, the commander told me that at the CSD, the complaint was people on quads, you know, ducking up and down on the streets. So we're taking enforcement action pursuant to your community concern. And the dad, or sometimes the guy himself on the quad, says, I grew up here. I've been riding dirt bikes in this river since I was, you know, 14 myself. I live here. It wasn't. So that's some of the thing that we face as well. And I think you pointed that out in your staff report, the kind of community, there can be a community mentality that says, well, we've always done fireworks in the park. And even if it's not or if it is an out of towner, they know that the community, I think you have inertia on your side with the unfortunate events of this year that you could go a different direction in the park with the community support.
Great, thank you. Since we have the TNT representative here, I know, we were told that we could put a program in place or change our ordinance where we could do a tax surcharge on the sale of the fireworks. Can you just explain that a little bit and what we need to do to initiate those steps, please?
Absolutely. The surcharge is, we have one in Lompoc, and typically it's just added on to the final purchase, and as you know, you can look at it as another tax. So it's ultimately the consumer pays for it, and yeah, and it goes straight to the city, and we actually collect it from the groups when we settle up with them, and then we will turn over a check to the city by the end of July. It's typically how that's handled.
And then,
What is that amount for Lompoc at this moment?
It's 4%. The total. Give you 1 second here. I could probably give you an idea because it's based on the retail sales of Lompoc. So probably. Probably in the neighborhood of $10,000.
Thank you.
but that's at 4%, right?
That's 4%.
But we could go as high as, was it
Believe it's 7%.
7%?
Yeah, I don't deal in any cities that go as high as 7, but I believe it is 7 is the max.
So does it matter if we're a special district, can you still get those funds to us, do you know?
If it gets authorized, I don't see any reason why we couldn't do the same
Because
thing. that we
normally
do
sales
for
tax
Lompoc.
goes to the county, so I don't.
Yeah, we just calculate it separately. We collect it from the groups and then we just write in this case, Lompoc, give them a check directly.
Pardon me?
It's a direct pay.
Is it direct pay, so we could collect that, okay. So
Yeah, I'm not super familiar. I know it was mentioned or it was brought up in the communication we received from TNT, but I'm not familiar with the enabling law that allows, in that case, a city to impose it. You know, we don't have the luxury of examining all the revenue sources that a city has, and I don't know if it's probably not very fair, but I don't know if David Hirsch, if you're familiar with this, and is this one that our board has the authority to impose, or?
Well, I'll have to look that one up. It's a relatively new law, as I understand it. But what I know is based upon material from the TNT folks that was in the packet. I'd have to look up the statute itself and see how it's worded.
And yeah, so is it possible for Okay.
Yeah, we can look into it, see if
Yes,
if that's even an option for us.
Okay.
And he's referring to the, Revell Communications that's our
Yeah.
public relations firm. And, he would know all about that, so.
Mr. Revelle passed on to me that it can be done in special districts.
Oh, okay. So do we know the steps? So can we share that
He's
with?
sending me all that
Oh,
information.
he's sending you all that information. Okay, good. Alright, and then so I thought at the meeting, the gentleman said, what, it could be like up to $30,000 for temple at 7%. I can't. But that
I
is-
think he was talking off the top of his head.
Yeah.
You caught him, and he was just doing some quick math.
Okay, so we.
I could probably give me a minute or two, I could probably get you a closer number. Would that be helpful?
Yeah,
I mean, I know, I'm familiar with.
Yeah, you could, yeah.
Absolutely.
So just 5% of total sales retail.
Yeah, okay. And then I know at the meeting also I brought up that we may have to talk with the fireworks booths themselves and see what we could do in terms of working with them, because obviously, as you can see, the enforcement is gonna cost a lot of money, so. And our fire department, we don't have the funding for all this, and we have to have obviously more people out there. So and we, once we find out the final figures, then we may have to we will come back to the, firework booths and discuss helping with the funding on that level as well, so. But I guess as we get more information, we could,
Chief Peterson, would you be able to provide funding if you had a dedicated individual for the park?
Provide funding for
How
that
much would
person.
it cost for a dedicated?
Well, I wouldn't wanna put one person out there alone, but
If we had administrative citations, non-sport.
yeah, administrative citations, I could get you that number.
maybe two people though, right?
Well, I was saying if we have
Definitely.
SO, non-sworn individual, along with one of our fire staff, let's say UTV, that would be patrolling that park.
Yeah, I can get you those numbers. I'd hate to take a swag right now, but I know
That's fine.
the evening of, with all the personnel that when we staff 4.0 on both engines and staff our UTV, I think we're in the $5,000 range.
Ballpark.
And parks can look at our budget to see what we can pitch in, because we have a long history with partnering with the sheriff's office for Lopez Lake on weekends, overtime shifts, which is super essential out there to make the place safe. And it might be a new norm here that, county parks should pitch it in. Well, so I'll look into that.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
Nice to see what we can bring in with an excess tax on that.
Yes.
For that to fund, at least for staffing the park, and then
Yeah.
look at the monies that go, if we were to go to a fixed aircraft or drone.
Yes, yeah. Okay. All right. Any other comments, question? Okay, go ahead, Amanda.
More of a suggestion, from the booth standpoint, and the customers that come through, and so many of them are not necessarily residents. Something that I see that could be of assistance to you in getting the word out, and as the sheriff stated, getting on that bandwagon and so forth, even though it's a little later. A QR code that pops up with all the new rules and regulations of where, when, how, and the map very, very clearly put up, so that as our customers come in and leave the booth, we can tell them or suggest to them, hey, did you check out the QR code? It pops up. And we utilize the QR code a lot, because if you've ever bought fireworks at one of our booths, most of the fireworks have a QR code on the back of them, so you can see what the firework does before you set it off, how pretty it is. So our customers are accustomed to utilizing the QR codes on their phones, and if there was something that directly took them to the rules, to the map, and letting them know, hey, if you break these rules, it's gonna cost you.
Yeah,
That might be
we could-
useful.
We could do something like that. We currently have GIS mapping that is available to us through county OES and what's called an evacuation mapping program that shows our zones here in Templeton. Plus, we have a new GIS company that can draw something up for us and make it pretty clear what those boundaries are.
So when you say map, are you talking about map where they
The
set
map.
off the fireworks?
Yes, the map that's customarily
Fire
printed out and
Yeah.
given to us.
Fire district map.
Yeah,
But they won't be able to set off the
No,
fireworks.
I think there's a way to utilize the QR code to take to like a website or webpage that shows all the rules, private property owners.
TCSD, we could dedicate a website that basically shows the maps where they're allowed to let it off, shows the ordinances, what the potential fines are. It just is gonna be redirected to a webpage. It should,
And it would show the new ordinance times you can set them off, where you can't set them off. Basically, the kind of public education program we're talking about, just really kind of amp it up.
But if the board adopts the new rules that were discussed in early September, it's pretty significant change. Right now, we have a few spots in town where you cannot use them. And this is gonna shift to, you can only use them on private property.
Yes.
So basically, all these other places are off limits, right? All streets, roads, sidewalks, parks, schools, everything are.
And again, I don't think, at least I know I'm not under any illusion, and I don't think, Chief Paul's under any illusion that if we shut down the park, and when we shut down the park, that's not gonna push people into surrounding parking lots, potentially other areas. I think we're kidding ourselves, and that's why the enforcement aspect is gonna need to be crucial this first year, to be able to curtail the flushing out of this park into those other private areas, park and ride, the hospital parking lot, down on the end of Posada in the cul-de-sac area, those doctors' offices parking lots. I mean, we've seen them all over. So it's probably going to make that aspect of it a little bit worse.
Yeah, I think that's true. If in fact the same people come and buy the Save and Save fireworks, they're gonna have an expectation to be able to use them. If they can't use them at the park, they're gonna go somewhere else to do it.
Well, so those would be for the people that are out of towners, though, right? So if you live in town. Yeah, I mean, I know, somebody made a comment at the previous meeting about only selling to Templeton residents. Yeah, okay. So I mean, I know that's, gonna be pretty challenging for the booths, but.
That'll change your revenue projections too.
I mean,
That'll change your revenue projections too.
yeah, definitely.
But I think if there was an expectation of each one of the booths to have, signage that clearly says, here's what the rules are, as well as a QR code. A QR code is great if they use it, but if they walk up and then they get a handout that goes along with the fireworks that you spot, and it says that on a big poster board that they're required to have, here's where you can and cannot use them. Again, it's one of many steps
Yeah.
moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I guess we could come back, revisit it again next year.
I mean, we're gonna have to revisit it each year.
Yeah.
As we see, if we enact some of these things and the enforcements. To enable individuals for the enforcement, say, is this idea that, okay, what happens next? Do they move out? Do we start trying to figure out more enforcement, how that includes things like.
What worked, what didn't. But
when you get your rules and your map and everything set, can I request as one of the booths that you get those things, say 2 weeks prior to opening the booths, so that we then have the time and ability to make, instead of regular size sheets of paper to hand out, we can go to like Blueprint or wherever and have much bigger posters made up that we can post very, very clearly on our booths.
yeah, I mean, our goal is, that's why we've started this conversation this early. Our goal is to, have this figured out and have, everybody be on the same page at least a couple of months before 4th of July. So, yeah, so we wanna get the word out.
Yeah, if we can have time
Yes.
to make
Of course,
big posters.
yes.
That are easily read and people can just walk up, snap picture, it's blatant, it's in their face.
No,
That'd be
definitely.
wonderful.
Yeah, we'll try to do that.
I was doing some rough calculations, and this is all based on traditional sales here in Templeton. I do think that the new rules are going to affect those sales, probably down. But based on last year, and estimating for the one group that I don't work with here in town, if you go, with the 4% surcharge, like they do in Lompoc, it'd be about $13,000 in, revenue. If you go with 5%, it'd be about $16,000. If you go to the full 7%, you're looking at about $23,000 based on last year, of course.
5% was 16,000?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just because I thought of it while you were talking about the private property restrictions just a second ago. What is the expectation of your board for a violation of a private property prohibition? You know, so they're lighting the fireworks off in the street or in the park and ride parking lot. Is it your opinion that that's a 911 emergency that the community should call 911 for? And if so, because I want to gauge, like right now in expectation, how are we going to expect enforcement, especially the first year of this PR or this campaign with a QR code and a new map, et cetera. That alone, forget about stepping up enforcement for illegal fireworks, which I think we all agree is a priority. And, you know, for me personally and professionally, it's a priority countywide because it's gotten so bad, as was discussed in the meeting the other night. Changing your safe and sane regulations dramatically to private property only is an understandable step, and it's completely, you know, your authority to do so. It's your CSD. So what does that look like enforcement wise when somebody either, you know, on purpose or out of ignorance, because they're a visit from out of the area and they've always lit off fireworks at this cul-de-sac at the end of this street or something, now is violating that revised ordinance? And, you know, what does enforcement of that look like?
Can I make a recommendation on this? As Mr. Jackson said, earlier, I think the focus, in my opinion, as your fire chief this year should emphasize on the illegal stuff. That's really where we were at, in that meeting from what I heard. And with regards to safe and sane, I think it needs to be an education program this first year instead of the hammer on the citation program, except for shutting down the areas where they're just not allowed anyways. And I honestly was a little taken back by the fact that we've allowed this for so many years with the county park, you know, when it's illegal in the county park.
One of the issues is still going to be like life and property. You're doing it in a parking lot, you shouldn't be doing it after we stop by, and deputy sees it, and you're not allowed to do it here.
Yeah, that's what.
But as for calling 911, unless, you know, life or property are on the line, that's an emergency.
And from the overall county standpoint, we're going to implement something new next year that it's still very conceptual, but I'm sharing it so you know there's other things working, you know, as well, where we can route fireworks complaints, because our 911s are besieged with fireworks complaints, and it encumbers the ability to take higher level emergency type calls. Not talking about that threat to life or property if somebody is, you know, setting off any firework in the middle of a grassy field or something. So we're already going to route those calls separately. I'm just trying to, you know, think it through, because if we upstaff, and let's say we had all the staff on the planet and you have 2 calls pending, one's an illegal aerial firework and one's lighting off fireworks in a cul-de-sac where it was legal a year ago, I would argue you triage the illegal firework, which is also a criminal violation. That's the thing, is we've identified this straightforward civil violation process because it's easier to take action. But we can still take criminal action for those situations that warrant it, and then where it's possible. It's just that requires a whole lot more stuff. So the civil is an easy way to get to the next call faster and you know, handle more calls. I just want to make sure we're talking openly about the fact that if we've got a safe and sane violation and an aerial violation, I would argue you prioritize the aerial illegal firework, all day long. But I don't want the narrative at next year's CSD following the 4th of July that Sheriff's Office left us hanging on the safe and sane violation change, ordinance changes that we've enacted this year.
I don't think that
Yeah, I think, prioritizing.
illegal is the priority.
I just want to try to wrap up some of the comments we got today, and so we know what we're working on this topic before you meet next. We're gonna research the issues related to the county's illegal fireworks ordinance. Come to a conclusion as to whether or not that prohibits Templeton CSD from putting our own program together, our own civil enforcement program together. And if that's the case, determine how we can partner with the county and bring back options to you about those partnership opportunities to get information to allow enforcement to take place or to encourage enforcement to take place in Templeton. We'll research the tax or the additional surcharge, however it's structured, on fireworks, bring that back to this committee. That might be a means of funding those additional enforcement mechanisms. The answer to the QR code is yes, we can do that once the new rules are known and put in a common location. We can answer what the cost of our per firefighter on overtime is. Just keep in mind, we have the same challenge as the sheriff's office has. We had 10 people on duty for fire suppression and deterrence. We don't have a lot more people to even get a hold of. So it's not a budgetary limitation that prevented us from getting more people. There just aren't more. So that's kind of my notes from your discussion earlier.
And then drone program, like look into drone programs and working.
Yeah, I'd like to find out from once we determine what our limitations are, what are the parameters of this sort of potential partnership?
Yes.
I think what I'm hearing from you is, okay, look, we wanna see enforcement actions take place in Templeton. So maybe we can agree to hire whomever the sheriff's department is looking at partnering with to work in Templeton and provide that data directly to the sheriff's department. So we actually have some enforcement. And I'm of the opinion, we don't need 100 citations at Templeton. Word will get out pretty quick. You have some. It just takes something to get this started. My concern is, I think that civil penalty program is gonna work well for the people who have big parties and all that stuff. I think it's gonna work not well at all for the stuff in the right of way and stuff at the park. And so we're still gonna have other problems.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact.
But that's what the boots on the ground would be, right?
We'll
Get some people, yeah.
So that's, I think we can get back, give us a few weeks to do some work on this end. So that when you next meet to discuss this topic, you have some kind of maybe some parameters of where we think we can go. And again, apologize that we really just learned yesterday that maybe we don't have the ability to enact a civil penalty program that would be effective.
Yeah. But if we could work with the sheriff's department, I think we would have the same effect. Enforcement, so yeah, okay. Before we close out this topic, any other questions, comments? Everything's good, all right. Great, thank you. We are done with this one. And then so our next item is the strategic plan objective update. Thank you for coming, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff, for coming. Appreciate it. Very helpful.
You guys, take care.
How are you going?
You
Okay.
And you don't need me anymore either, so,
I'm good. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
thank you.
He's willing to.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Mr. Hirsch, I think the best thing is that he speaks to our county council. and-
Yeah, we did. It's actually, the county council used to work the same firm that we all know each other.
Okay.
Okay.
And again, so that we can, I want to be able to give clear direction to our personnel and have a legally defensible mechanism. So we don't write violation notices that
They don't do any good. Yeah.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
so, yeah, strategic plan objective update, is this fire chief?
No, this is actually the item that was discussed at your last board meeting.
Yeah. Yes, I was gonna, okay.
So as you recall, we had taken the time to begin to draft some new language, and when we briefed the board on the strategic plan review, that's just been a week ago, I guess, there was some request to sort of split out the research part and the implementation part of this fireworks enforcement.
Yes.
And then the board said, well, we can have the committee kind of take a look at how this is listed. So this is where we stand as far as like the additions. But we'd like to come back with, does this kind of meet? There was some wordsmithing that was taking place during the board meeting on this topic by board members. And I think the issue is laid out there. We proposed adding objectives related to fireworks because that came up since the strategic plan was originally adopted. And we listed this collaboratively evaluate and improve effectiveness in enforcement of fireworks. And I think that's maybe two things: research and then ultimately implement whatever that's going to be.
Okay, yeah. We can bump B all the way down at the bottom, though. We don't really know how we're gonna implement until we have some of the legal requirements. The idea, we can definitely do public outreach, revising the code, which we now for the sake of saying, which we've already kind of come to an idea of what we're gonna move forward with. That might be able to be stepped up a little bit.
Well, we need to know what we're doing though before we start.
For the safe and sane side.
The safe and sane stuff, I think we had solid direction coming out of that board meeting in early September. It's just a matter of getting it in the fire code drafts. We're gonna have a whole new fire code to adopt anyway, so our thoughts were just up to bring that new information with the fire code, which would come at the end of the year.
Okay.
And then it's a little tricky because while you adopt an ordinance, the fire code doesn't take effect until the county ratifies it, so it takes several months later.
January is when we typically submit them, and
It would take several months.
it would take probably March until,
But by that time, we'd have enough information to be able to provide for the public.
yeah. That doesn't mean that we don't have the ability to go out and enforce on that element. It always falls back to the previous code, but if we're gonna make changes, and I'm gonna be very interested to see whether there's limitations on the administrative citation, because the fire code pretty implicitly says there is not limitations, but we can do it.
Yes.
And so, but the health and safety code, to some degree, in some instances, is a source that the fire code pulls from. So it's just gonna be interesting to find out how that all shakes out. But with regards to this, it's gonna be important to get this pretty detailed, because it's gonna be incorporated into the new adoption.
So again, I think we're solid on the safe and sane regulations. We got good direction from the board about what those need to be. I'm not really worried about that item C there. That'll come before you when it's drafted and you can change it, you can make changes to it. Not super worried about it, but it will take a little while before it's quote unquote totally implemented, because again, you can adopt an ordinance that to implement the fire code, but then it goes to the county to be ratified, and we wait for their schedule. It's a few months later. Nonetheless, I'm confident we can have it in place before next July 4th.
And I think we can actually, depending upon time, we can start doing some of those hearings in as early as November to try and get the implementation earlier in the year, the first part of 26, so.
So really, I think the issues that the board were kind of wrestling with were items 6A and B here. And maybe because there was a request to kind of break up the implementation, maybe A is fine. I think that's,
I think A is fine. I think B is, we're still waiting on the civil side.
A lot of information.
Yeah, we don't know what that looks like yet, right?
So you're thinking moving it down?
Just on the bottom, like implementation is the very last thing that we're gonna be able to know when we can do that. We can just leave it
Or
blank.
you could just leave it there and just target, doesn't have a
TBA.
target, yeah, what's the target, it doesn't have a target.
Well, the target date would be June. I mean, I'm thinking like in order for us to be in the business of implementing whatever you decide, the board decides over the next several months, it needs to be in place and set by June. So that July 4th holiday, those
Yeah.
tools are available.
But you mean on the strategic plan side of
Yeah.
things? Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I'll be honest, I would think we should have more June's late for some of it.
For the implementation. Everything should be in place by April, huh? At least.
May at the latest.
I mean, keep in mind that implementation, depending, may be part of the Pub Ed program that we're gonna put out there, so that may be details of that would have to go in place in April or.
Yeah. We could try maybe April or. and then-
Sure, I mean, yeah, I would just listen to this like that's our kind of drop dead date.
Yeah,
In order to be effective on July 4th, we gotta be ready before then.
but you don't have a date right now for it, for
Well,
implementation.
Yeah, we didn't propose this. This is what the board asked for, right? We proposed just item A.
Oh,
and
okay,
the
I see,
board
so
said
you want
the-
us to give you a date?
Well, I want, right now we got the word implementation doesn't mean much to me.
Oh,
We need to, like, okay, and I think partly because we don't know what we're gonna implement yet, cause you're still,
So the one that's TDA is the civil. Whether or not, or we have collaboration with the SO.
Right.
The other implementation side is essentially the public outreach. That's a subsection on implementation. Once we start getting everything ratified.
yeah, and I think that's listed as D
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
But we could, elaborate or clarify or however you'd like.
I mean, from
I think what you're saying is you could just eliminate B altogether and then in each A, C, and D, add and implement.
Yeah,
And
and implement.
and then put your date there, because I think what Chief Deputy Paul said, I thought was, I think he's right on, is that there's a lot of synergy right now, a lot of support that, the outreach, once the board lands the plan on, hey, this is what it's gonna look like in terms of, hey, we're not allowing it outside of public space or private space, excuse me. You're not gonna be able to use the park. It's that information can start getting out now.
As soon as
It can
possible.
start getting in the water bill, it can start getting out now. Whereas some of these other things, it's gonna take a little bit, more information needs to come from the county as to what, they're gonna be able to support. And there's a lot of processes and steps, but instead of just having, everything implemented, maybe just do it individually, would be my recommendation.
But I guess, again, I think I'm on the same page with the general manager is what does that implementation mean? I mean, what does it look like? And is it incorporative of C and D?
So implementation is different on C versus implementation on D.
I think.
Well, yeah, D's already says implement, so I mean,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, I thought, so we had proposed and drafted essentially A, C, and D. And at the board meeting, there was like, well, this is sort of more than, A was, maybe there was a request to make that two pieces, and so Carrie made a note of implementation as being the second piece, but the board didn't include that conversation. Kind of kicked it to the fire committee.
Yeah, well, implementation would be what we're doing, talking with the sheriff, make sure the sheriff is, we're working with the sheriff department, also working with the county parks, bringing in signs, so that would be implementation, as well as if we were gonna do any flyover or drone programs. So implementing all those things that we're gonna end up, because we're evaluating right now. So, I mean, based on the meeting that we had, those are the things that came out of it that we wanna do, right? They're just, what we discussed.
I would look at that as more of development of the program
Yeah.
instead of implementation, development.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Yeah. Develop a program, yeah.
So maybe
Evaluate and
B,
develop a
maybe
program.
B, then we replace implementation with develop and implement Templeton CSD specific fireworks enforcement program.
Okay,
That sounds good.
yeah. See, you had it in you, Jeff.
Collaboratively.
Yeah, so I want to call it Templeton CSD because I think we're gonna end up with some things that are gonna be probably
Yeah.
reliant on the county and some things that we're gonna be able to do on our own. We'll reflect that on your next update on this.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, item 3, review of 2021 AP Triton Master Plan Assessment.
Sorry,
Whoops.
So on this agenda packet, we included a link to the 2021 AP Triton Master Plan Assessment. It's contained, let's see, here. This came before this committee, although the makeup of the committee was different at the time, and this ultimately went to the board. This document was reviewed by the committee at length, and the committee assisted with the with the development of some responses. So I don't know how much, one of your objectives in the strategic plan is to review the contents of this report. And we can go through it in as much or as little detail as you would like. It covers a lot of areas of the fire department's operations and procedures and so forth and so on. The report concludes with a series of recommendations. And each recommendation has a response that was drafted at the time this report was presented to the board. So a couple of these items you're going to hear about here, you know, in the future agenda or the following agenda items. But if you were going to cover just any of them, it might make sense to review those specific recommendations. So.
And or just try and answer any questions you have on any of them.
So the first one was evaluate the adoption of a cost recovery fees for certain services. There was the recommendation and the response. We've dabbled in this, but have not implemented a formal program.
Yeah, we didn't really discuss it much.
Happy to clarify, or if there's something you want to look into again. It's got
Because
some challenges.
Yeah, you looked a little bit into it and you just, it's a lot of challenges with it, trying to put in terms of billing and things like that, and what we're gonna charge or who we're gonna charge.
Well, I mean, the broad brush approach, yes. So there are certain things we can definitely do, and especially with regards to certain types of facilities. You know, but I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but the initial recommendation from one of the board members was trying to get insurance cost recovery.
Yes.
That's the one that just really couldn't do anything with.
And then anything else, it just doesn't make sense because how much it will cost us to get the software programs, and it just, the risk versus benefit, it didn't make sense. That was my understanding.
Correct. So, and this is a little bit different than this topic right here. If we got specific with some of the things, i.e., you know, residential care facilities, those types of things that are kind of been using the call response, the 911 system. I know the city of Paso Robles, and then I developed something in the city of Atascadero before I left there to charge residential care facilities, especially the larger ones. We don't have many small care facilities, which are called the 6-packs, the 6 bed and under. The one we have specifically is about 100 beds, and we would allow them a certain amount of calls per year.
Yes.
And then anything over and above that, they would get billed for at our standard rate for the engine company. So, you know, I could still go down that path, but that's not what this is specifically talking about.
Might it be helpful to, instead of just kind of randomly going through these, is maybe look at your short, medium and long term and come back to us with, hey, here's where we're at with each, you know, here's the things we've achieved. Here are the things that we think need to be brought up to the short, and, you know, maybe you informing us a little bit versus us just kind of randomly going through.
Yep.
Yeah.
Addendums, strikes, you know, alterations and things of that nature.
Yep.
Just a change revision.
Because I know there's several things you have on longer term that you guys have accomplished already. Or
We have.
accomplished.
So would it be worthwhile, I guess maybe just thinking about how to incorporate this to amend this document, maybe add in, you know, the response right here was from back in 2021. You know, so it's about 4.5 years old actually, or 4 years old. And do like a 2025 update, and just a written response that can come before this committee and then would be documented in here, or I mean, is that? would you-
Yeah, that would be good.
So again, we could bring together like a draft to the committee. When we prepared these, we reviewed our draft response, the staff's responses with the committee, and made some final versions before it went before the board with these responses.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we can re-agendize this with those responses if that's what you're kind of looking for. We'll keep the original response noted and do it like an update.
How many recommendations? Mine doesn't have the responses.
Does it?
At the very bottom.
Very, very bottom.
Yeah, it's a separate.
Yeah. Oh, at the very end?
Yes,
There were,
you go all the way down.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
there were 26 specific recommendations.
Yeah, some of them are like long term, so. Okay. Okay, no other questions or comments on this, okay? Next item is fire station expansion. Any updates on that?
Yeah, so currently where we're at with that is we have submitted to the county. We've paid our plan check review fees. And off the bat, there were a couple of items that the architect had to correct and take care of. So as it stands, we are in plan review with the county, and we're getting dates anywhere from 3 to 6 months, depending upon, you know, their workload. The one thing that did come up that's here is we have had a failure of our HVAC system up in our living quarters. And we have gone out, as we brought to the board this last meeting, and we've gone out to 3 different companies, gotten bids back. Be Right There Heating and Air is the one that had the lowest bid, and kind of the best system that we were looking at. I've initiated for them to basically get us on the schedule to install that. That's going to require them to do a very, what's the word I'm looking for, minor set of plans to submit to the county to get a permit. And then we'll have to use that permit to make the change to the actual real plan. So when that portion comes up, we want to submit it so they're not wasting time on the actual HVAC system that's in the plan itself. With that said, there are other elements that it's going to impact up there. Window locations, those types of things, walls. And so I can put something together at a later date to bring back to the committee on recommendations, what we'll have to do to kind of adjust things upstairs to install the HVAC system. Right now, we're going to be able to make it work kind of how it is, but with some small adjustments. So Informed on that.
Great, thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay. 2025 Safer Grant application.
So I wish I had any information to share with the committee on this, but I don't. They indicated in their NOFO, which is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, that they would have information back by the end of August. That obviously hasn't happened, and now we're at the end of September and still haven't received any information with regards to the awards. When we logged on, usually you'll see some departments that have received awards. Nobody's received awards on Safer Grants at this point yet. So I don't know that anything has been awarded. Even with the new standard that they put with matching. So we're just still waiting to hear on this Safer Grant. Keeping in mind that clock is ticking on our two engineer positions.
Any questions? Review of NFPA 1710 guidelines.
Yeah, one of the board adopted strategic goals in supporting action item was to have the committee review NFPA and OSHA guidelines as they relate to the weight of the response. In other words, how many people and apparatus need to respond to a given scenario or incident. We were unable to find an OSHA requirement that dealt with this on point. But we have brought you NFPA 1710 or a summary of it. And it's here. I do want to note that this was one of the areas that the AP Triton assessment suggests that we adopt a separate or use a separate NFPA standard. And the fire chief disagreed with that position, and so we reference 1710, which is the standard for career departments, not volunteer or combination departments.
That's what I'm looking at right now. So
Yeah, when you look at the definition of 1720, it just doesn't match what we are.
you're not volunteer at all.
No.
So I think there's actually, this little summary includes a lot of different things, including response times and whatnot. The specific objective dealt with the weight of the response, which is addressed on
Yeah.
this section here.
And I can go through some of this if you'd like, but I think it's information that the board has heard, the committee's heard, but I'll just, in a quick summary. The NFPA standard for company staffing, and a company is the crew that's on an engine, is 4 personnel. And it goes up depending upon call volume, tactical hazards, those types of things. The initial response, and I think this is what was referenced for with the weight of the response, for a single family low hazard structure fire is 15 personnel. We do not currently achieve that without myself, another battalion chief, responding to the call. We get very close, we get about 14. And that's including myself. So that is.
That's relying on mutual aid.
That's relying on mutual aid, well, auto aid. Yeah. So our auto aid response is Paso Robles, Atascadero, CAL FIRE County Fire, and did I say Atascadero? I said Atascadero, yeah. So that's our initial low hazard, single family residential fire. That's what we get. So, and just so I'm doing my math right, that's 3 personnel from Atascadero, 3 from Paso Robles, 2 from the county, 3 from us, myself. That's 12 plus a battalion chief, 13. We're at 13. I take that back, not 14. So we are too shy of the NFPA standard minimums And this is one of those things, you know, that Chief Agson is well aware of, that we're fine until we have an incident at a fire or something of that nature and somebody gets hurt. And then one of the first questions from an opposing lawyer is gonna be, well, did you meet NFPA standard 1710? And the answer will be, no, we didn't have the staffing. So there are certain other things that we look at with regards to bringing additional personnel back. And that's how we have met that standard, by bringing 2 of our off-duty engineer or captain back on 7160, and then we meet that standard. Or 3, if we can get one of our reserves to respond back. But that just hasn't been a real consistent response for us, especially on larger incidents, within a timely manner. Because most of our reserves live 45, you know, or more minutes away. We do have several in San Luis Obispo now. But the 2 that we just had locally in Atascadero, they just got picked up for full-time positions. I'm sorry, in Paso. That just got picked up with full-time positions. And then I have one local one that's in the fire academy right now, which is unavailable. But those are the kind of things that we're looking at. With regards to medium hazard, obviously it goes up to 28, but we increase our automatic mutual aid requests depending upon the level of the fire and the medium hazard. So, you know, high hazards, well, you know, we had a lot of people on feed and grain fire. And so we probably met that standard at the peak of the fire. But this is something that, you know, I just want to keep reiterating to the committee and to the board that as we are looking at the ending of the SAFER grant, you know, we could potentially go back to that. Well, and not only 2, but I would challenge it as 1 in the evening, because we have 1 full-time personnel in the evening. If we go back to a full-time captain and a reserve, in the fire service, when you bring a reserve on, essentially they are as green can be, and pairing them up with the captain, that captain is doing way too many things to then train and or coach during that incident. So it puts us in a precarious situation with regards to falling back to that pattern of staffing again. So I just want to throw that out there and make the committee and eventually the board aware that, you know, that's pretty critical.
You said that CAL FIRE only has 2?
They have 2 full-time people that are regular full-time people, not a revolving door reserve.
That would probably be something that we probably need to start to look at, trying to see, going away from the reserve program and doing full-time people. If it's possible. I think reserve program is nice, but with the number of calls that we have now and.
It's really different. Because if you look at county fire's been, you know, they've been reluctant to improve their staffing for just forever. And they now came to a point where they're starting to staff 3 on a few engines. And then over time, they've got a plan to do that, to migrate. But primarily it's because they've relied on paid call firefighters that received a stipend monthly. And to my estimation or understanding, I think there's only maybe less than 5 PCFs in the entire county now, where there used to be a dozen PCFs at every station. So that if 30 came, and I know when I was a captain down in Atascadero, battalion chief in Paso, when I'd get 30, I'd get, you know, 5 to 10 PCFs as well. So you would easily be able to accomplish your numbers. You know, it wasn't really necessarily a numbers thing at that point, but as the, you know, just the amount of training that's required and what have you, a lot of agencies, even, you know, my own agency, when I started Tesker, we had 30 reserve firefighters, and they have none now. They just, you know, they do rely on seasonal firefighters during the summertime, which is, there's a, you know, there's always, you know, that always is a consideration as far as if you went to two full-time staffing is augmenting with seasonals and anticipating, and there's no guarantee, but anticipating you're gonna get some of the CFFA, you know, money from guys going out of county and getting reimbursed. So the city of San Luis, my first year as a chief, I got like 768,000, then it was almost $1 million the next year. And we started getting a little greedy and we built it to our budget, and then I got like 140 on a third year. And as you know, that's a difficult conversation with Derek Johnson. I just talked to him the day before yesterday. It's a very difficult conversation to go, hey, I had 400,000 built my budget, but I didn't make that much, so. But I'm getting kind of outside of what the question
But that's a
is.
valid point, because this year, we brought in 130,000 just from the engine and admin fees alone. That, you know, that's the wash that the firefighter rate is, you know, that's kind of a net neutral. I think the total amount was 200 and something thousand that we brought in this year from the Gifford and the Garnett. And so, 130,000 to put back into, you know, a seasonal program would definitely work.
So you have adopted a goal that says, you know, depending on the outcome of the SAFER grant, you will evaluate, or we collectively will evaluate these options, including taking the funds that we use in the Reserve Firefighter Program and determining whether we can afford to go to just a 2.0 full-time staff as opposed to the kind of hybrid model that we had pre-SAFER, the Measure A model, which did rely on the second person was a reserve firefighter with a varying set of skills or experience at that point.
Yeah, experience.
Yeah, experience, I think matters.
And the problem is, you know, we put them through these 2-week academies, which cost us, you know, pretty good amount of time, energy, and money. And the average, I'll say the average is about a year before we lose them.
How much do we pay for the academies?
Well, it's, so each individual gets 80 hours worth of 8 hours a day pay. Then it's their physicals, their backgrounds, and then the overtime. And typically, I've really cut back on, you know, how many people, but we get a lot of people that come in and volunteer to help train the academy, even on the reserve side of things. All of that said, it's, you know, I can put the numbers together for you, but it's substantial, you know.
Yeah, they're on the clock.
Oh,
Training is paid time.
Yeah,
It's not a gray area.
And then they leave after a year? Or less than
That's
a year?
because it's other agencies are benefiting because they're now hiring somebody that's got experience, you know, and I mean, I hired 28 firefighters in 5 years, and I think I hired.
7 of them.
Yeah, 5 pictures of it came directly from, in fact, I've got one of them now works for me in Diablo, that went from here to San Luis, and oddly enough, he's out of Diablo, but.
We have to question his judgment.
But that's, I mean, you guys do a great job. But I think that's the average for Bay and a lot of agencies, even just with seasonal firefighters. So there's quite the demand.
Okay. And honestly, what we're seeing on the hiring side of things in the fire service, just, you know, I'll call it industry-wide, where you would see for these larger departments, thousands of applications is no longer thousands of applications. You're down to hundreds, and then the qualified people for like paramedics and those types of things are almost non-existent. It's just really fallen off over the years.
Any comments, questions on 1710? Everything good? All right. Okay, anything else? Did you want to cover on 1710?
No, I just, I'm really would you know, want to further the conversation with regards to, that permanent 2O staffing. And then as, you know, construction continues and we start to build revenues and those types of things, then we can start looking at the other opportunities. Now, keep in mind, by limiting ourselves to the 2O staffing, we pull ourselves out of that ability to go out of county too, so we lose that revenue.
Yeah, especially if we're getting a new fire truck too, right, and fire engine. That would help us be able to go out of county more regularly, so if we have the personnel. So we have the equipment, so might as well use it. But yeah. Okay. All right, future items, what do we wanna discuss in the next meeting? So you have obviously fireworks.
So we've got the fireworks enforcement components, which are, which are a driver, I think, in terms of keeping us on track. We have the update to the 2025 update to the master plan that you briefly touched on today. We also had a few other goals that were already identified to come before you. So it's not a lack of, we could put together an agenda and be ready and having something meaningful.
Justin's ready for next week, next week, let's do it.
But are there other items that you'd wanna, request that we can?
Well, I guess at this point, we just need to wait to see what happens with Safer Grant, but to be honest, I don't know with the Safer Grant, the way it's set up with the matching, how, how that's gonna work for our fire department, so I don't know if it would be a good idea to start looking at a possibility of the permanent 2O staffing now and coming back with numbers, or?
Well, I mean, we can do that, but the general manager and I have talked with regards to the Safer Grant can work, but we would have to reduce or limit our reserve program back to a 12-hour daytime program. So kind of cut half of that out, use those funds to augment the match.
Okay,
All right. To be able to do that.
so if they're related, then I guess we could wait till after we hear from the Safer Grant.
Yeah, I don't know, if this funding is tied right now, that we're back in another federal budget crisis, it's like it happens continually, basically. I don't know if that's what's holding up this funding or these announcements.
Okay, anything else? Would you like you guys think of anything else to put on the agenda? No, everything's good. Well, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. You're welcome. Meeting adjourned. Hey, it looked like you guys were having fun today on Bennett.
Oh, right.